In New York City, our police are being mobbed, brutalized, and horrifically beaten by swarms of migrants who have no business being in our country, yet then they are released back onto the streets while giving our police officers the middle finger. You saw that, right, the other day? These are people that come from countries, I guarantee you they wouldn't do that in their country. They wouldn't do that in their country. I know their countries. You do that in their country, they wouldn't be living for more than 5 minutes. This month, a savage illegal alien criminal pulled out a gun and shot a 38-year-old female tourist in the middle of Times Square.
We begin with breaking news out of Queens, where police say they have found nearly dozens of migrants living in a small, cramped basement. Emergency services have now been called for this. And News 4's Melissa Colorado is at that scene live in South Richmond Hill. Melissa, we're talking about up to 40 people living in this basement space at one time?
Adam, it's actually more. I just spoke to the landlord, and he confirmed to me that he had 74 migrants living in this property, living in the basement. You can see police officers are here on scene. It's all part of this ongoing investigation. And I also spoke to the neighbor, the next door neighbor, who said she was the one who called 311. She made the complaints. She said she was just concerned for her safety because of noticing all of the e-bikes that were parked next door to her property. Now, we're being told this all started with FDNY inspectors looking into that complaint made by that next door neighbor about multiple e-bike batteries found near the side of the home. And the landlord confirming for us, yes, in fact, he had 74 migrants sleeping in shifts, sleeping in bunk beds, sleeping in the basement of this property. He said he felt bad for these migrants, most of them from Africa, who were trying to make a living out here and not being found any shelter here. Now, officials started asking questions, and they discovered as many as 80 migrants, but we're being told right now that number is 74. They were sleeping in shifts in the basement of this home. The fire department has issued a full vacate order. Now, of course, you'll recall the city has limited the amount of time that single adult migrants can stay in city-run shelters to 30 days. Migrants can reapply for shelter at a reticketing center in the East Village, but the landlord telling me these migrants were tired of waiting. They were tired of trying to sleep outdoors, and this was the best option he could provide for them. This basement behind this furniture store here in Queens that you can see is now, there's been a full vacate order. Nobody can go in, but this landlord telling me he felt horrible. He felt sorry for these migrants. He was trying to find some kind of option, some type of shelter for them, and they had been staying there in bunk beds, sleeping in shifts, only 2 bathrooms. In fact, he also told me he was trying to find porta potties for them because he had as many as 74 men sleeping in that basement. But right now, we're trying to find out more information from the FDNY, from the NYPD, as far as what goes on from here and where these migrants will go. Again, we're being told as many as 74 men were living in this basement. Take a listen.
When I told them that they don't want to go, because they always say they don't want to go. They'd rather stay here than go back over there. Okay, I was trying to, talk to them, talk to the guy who was in charge. He told me that he promised me that they will have a place for them. They have a place for them. This is what he told me. We have a place for them. They're going somewhere. I told him, how you solve that? Because I don't want them to go back through the same thing again. That's why they're here.
And Adam, as I mentioned before, I spoke to the next door neighbor who said she was concerned about her safety, noticing all those e-bike batteries that were basically being charged next door to her property. Of course, you've been hearing all the headlines with fires started by these defective lithium-ion batteries, and that woman saying, I was just scared for my safety, for my property, for the house, and for my family as well. Adam, we'll send it back to you.
Wow, Melissa, just to be clear, the landlord's saying that he wasn't charging them, that he was just having them stay there for free?
It was a donation system, people pulling in resources, people pulling in money. But according to this landlord, who is a migrant himself, he was just saying, I felt horrible for these men. They had nowhere else to go. And this was the solution I could provide, a basement with bunk beds, people sleeping in shifts. He said the city was just not providing another alternative for these men who had nowhere else to go. That is according to the landlord. And of course, you'll be hearing from him later today at 4 o'clock. Adam.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for all the details. Melissa Colorado live on the scene there in Queens. Thank you.
All right, some pretty big news here in the last couple of minutes here, Bill. President Biden is apparently set to visit the southern border this week on Thursday. He's going to go to Brownsville, Texas to meet with U.S. Border Patrol agents. And it's going to happen on the same day that former President Trump is going to make remarks in Eagle Pass, Texas. It'll be about 300 miles apart there on the border. And we find Alexis McAdams there in Eagle Pass, Texas right now with the very latest on this very surprising and stunning visit. Alexis?
Hi, Aisha. Yeah, this all comes right as the border is top of mind for voters all across the country. You see it daily in polls, and when you're out there talking to voters on the campaign trail, now it is top of mind also for President Joe Biden, who, as you just said, is going to be out here at the southern border on the same day that former President Donald Trump will be here in Eagle Pass, Texas. Take a look here. This is not the first time, though, that President Joe Biden has visited the southern border. Last time, though, was in January of 2023. You can see him there in El Paso, Texas. Biden was in town there, Aisha, for about 4 hours, talking with Border Patrol and checking out the area. This comes as the president is now reportedly eyeing executive action, trying to slow the border surge as we see it every day. New York, Chicago, you name it. Every state now a border state with migrants flowing in. Former President Trump will highlight the chaos at the southern border as he does on a regular basis. He'll be here in Eagle Pass, Texas, Trump, talking about the recent crimes by migrants. We know our team has been talking to him in the past several days about this horrible case in Georgia where the Venezuelan migrant who crossed illegally into the U.S. killed a 22-year-old nursing student, according to authorities. So we can tell you also back out here live in Eagle Pass, Texas. If you want to take a live look at our drone camera, the chaos continues on a daily basis. So we'll have to see what the president has to say about it. Aisha.
Border Patrol agents releasing hundreds of illegal migrants onto the streets of Southern California.
And this comes, of course, as the fight over border security continues in Congress, as we were just mentioning. Fox News correspondent Bill Melugin is in San Diego tonight with the latest.
Today, the border crisis was dumped on Southern California's doorstep at the hands of the federal government. Border Patrol mass released hundreds of illegal immigrants to San Diego's streets as bus after bus arrived at a local transit station, releasing masses of men and women from around the globe who had crossed the California border illegally. And they plan to travel to blue cities across America.
¿A dónde vas en los Estados Unidos?
Nueva York. New York, going to New York.
Atlanta.
Atlanta.
New Jersey.
New Jersey.
Chicago.
Chicago.
And New York.
New York. After release, nonprofit volunteers helped direct the migrants to private buses that took them to the airport and other transit stations. Some decided not to wait and crammed into taxis. Most told us they're here to work, but one man from the West African country of Mauritania had other reasons. Why'd you come?
Because I'm not free in there, and I'm like homosexual, and they're Muslims, and they don't accept that in there.
So you're going to claim asylum?
Exactly.
And Fox News did reach out to California Governor Gavin Newsom's office to get his reaction to what happened here in San Diego today. They responded by blaming Republicans for what they describe as chaos at the border. They also added that California is, quote, a model of partnership for a safe and humane border.
We have this international crisis that really requires federal intervention that local government is being asked to subsidize. Local government is not designed or built to handle such a crisis.
Definitely both a humanitarian crisis for the migrants that are arriving, and it is creating a fiscal crisis for the city.
I don't see an ending to this. This issue will destroy New York City.
The present migrant crisis is quite unprecedented, both in scale, in the diversity of the nationalities that are coming to the border, and the impact it's having not only on the border states, but in the states and cities inside the country.
I think it's at this point politically unsustainable for the Biden administration to maintain this unlimited flow into what's essentially a welfare state network of cities like New York and Denver and Chicago.
We begin this afternoon with the migrant crisis in New York City hitting a new boiling point. For days now, we've seen many forced to sleep on the sidewalk outside the intake center at the Roosevelt Hotel in Midtown. and good afternoon to you. I'm Liz Cho.
I'm Sandra Bookman, and today for David Navarro, adding to the desperation, many migrants say they don't have water or access to restrooms. And the mayor is now warning that scenes like this could become more common, with the city struggling to find space for them.
93,000 migrants have come to New York City since last spring. The Roosevelt Hotel has a dual purpose. It's an arrival center for migrants where they can gain access to vaccinations, food, and other resources, but it is also a humanitarian relief center that houses families with children.
Eyewitness News reporter Sonia Rincon live this afternoon in Midtown with more. Sonia?
Liz and Sandra, the evidence of the shelter shortage, you can see it with the lines that are growing each day of mostly men waiting hours and sometimes days just to register at the intake center here at the Roosevelt Hotel. Now, the city has a legal obligation to provide shelter to anyone who requests it, but the Legal Aid Society says it is considering filing litigation to enforce the law, since it would appear that the city is failing to meet that obligation. If people are sleeping in the streets overnight, the mayor says the city is currently caring for 50,000 asylum seekers, but as you mentioned, 93,000 have arrived since last year, and hundreds more continue to arrive by the day.
We need help, and it's not going to get any better.
Mayor Adams says the strain on the city is only going to get worse. The lines outside the Roosevelt, which were blocks long on Saturday in the heat and rain, are shorter today, but there are still dozens of men waiting more than 24 hours who slept out here last night, in the morning washing up on the street for another day of waiting to be processed at the intake center here and taken to a men's shelter, since only families with children can stay at hotels. Across the street, the owner of Amos Restaurant says the sight of the men lining up for the last couple of weeks and charging their phones in his outdoor dining space has hurt business, but that it wasn't an issue at all when it was just families staying inside the hotel.
We were all happy about it. And actually, we were offering jobs to some people that they were asking for work. But this is a massive distraction.
We're having a human crisis here in the city, and no one's stopping and even trying to offer people food or anything. I can't imagine how terrified they must be.
Staff members at the center in the hotel, run by Health and Hospitals, are distributing some food and water. But this asylum seeker from Senegal told us through a translator the days-long wait has been tough, mostly because of the uncertainty.
They don't allow them to go anywhere. No shower, no bathroom. Yo tengo ya 3 meses y medio viajando.
This man from Venezuela says he's been traveling for 3.5 months and doesn't mind waiting a little longer. The men received what look like raffle tickets to mark their spot in line.
Privilegio estar aquí en Nueva York.
This man says he just feels privileged to be in New York City and wants to get on his feet. But that means being able to work legally, something Mayor Adams continues to push the federal government to expedite.
There's nothing more anti-American than you can't work.